Hello, hello, hello. The football experience is back. Caleb, welcome along. Back to our show. I'm welcoming you along. I should welcome the audience along for what's going to be hopefully a wild ride. But you know what I said last time?
We're as much in for the ride today as anyone else because we're going in a bit blind.
Yeah. Well, there's not too much to talk about since there's FA Cup and then there's like too many big games from the other leagues. But guys, everyone tuning in, like, subscribe, comment as well. Do all that good shit to help us out. Let's try hit some milestones with views and subscriber counts and whatnot. I guess the big news, we can start with everything, but the big news would be, I don't know, not your man, but your man's rival getting sacked. So I want to start there because I want to ask the question. Gerrard got the sack. I think it was it before the World Cup? Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
And now Frank's got the sack, albeit he took a job, they were already in a relegation battle last year and he managed to save them. Now, since they've both been sacked, would they be considered Premier League failures in terms of their managerial start? And where to next for them? And then that will lead me into my sort of secondary side question, I guess, in regards to former players and former legends, former club legends especially.
Well, I think it's impossible to not say that they have been failures in the managerial sense in the league because obviously they've both been sacked now. It's funny on the Lampard issue, and I have been listening to a bit on just how it went down. Obviously, you've heard in the recent weeks, Everton, what's going on there, how much of a shambles it seems that the club is now. And how we alluded to, I think I don't know if I said it on the pod, but when you're watching the goal rush, we get the goal rush over here in Australia, and it's like the 3:00 kickoffs, and you get the goals from all the games, and you're watching one the main game. And I think I said there's no more exciting words to hear during that goal rush show than there's been a goal at Goodison Park, and it's you don't know which way it's gone. It's oh my god! And then there was that game against Brighton, obviously, where what was it, 4-1, 4-0, and that just the goals kept coming. And you're oh man, so there's got to be some trouble down at Goodison tonight. And I think the way it's gone down, I mean, you can't. The worrying thing for Lampard, if he does hope, and I guess that's the question, if he does hope to continue to have a managerial career, is that this seems to be a pattern where it's come in, solidify, get the club to somewhat a foundation, come in during pretty tough times. I mean, Derby wasn't like that really, but then Chelsea and Everton, you can definitely say were. Just stabilize us a little bit, but then when it comes time to grow on any foundations, it just never seems to happen for him. So you think back to Chelsea chiefly, going through the transfer embargo, having to play the young kids, or that being the strategy, having very little pressure obviously that season, and doing somewhat a good job, you'd have to say, given that there wasn't that much expectation. I believe he got them into the Champions League.
Yeah, he did.
And players like Mason Mount, Tammy Abraham coming through. So even Tomori, who went on to AC Milan. So a good season there. But then when it came time for the signings to come back in, and it came time to build on that, I think he had a decent start to the next season. But then it all sort of just turned into sand in his hands, and he couldn't keep hold of it. So. It seems to be a sort of pattern because you think of there was maybe a potential for Everton to maybe build some momentum off the back of, the community, the blue half of Merseyside really getting behind them for that fight for survival last season. Some great scenes last season as they survived, and there's a chance because look, it's an extreme example obviously, but let's not forget that Leicester the season before they won the league, they had to fight for survival, and it came very much. They had to put together a good run of form to do that, and Everton much the same. So there was a chance, maybe not to build to that extent, but to at least build on it. It just never happened. Can you blame that all on Lampard? Maybe for Chelsea, yes, because you've somewhat been given a silver spoon. But can you blame it at Everton? The only reason you can maybe argue is because it, like I say, it is starting to seem like a pattern. But like we said, Everton, we know how unstable the club is. I would say, or appears to be, just to be technically correct. But yeah, it's just so it seems to be a pattern. And the why I said if he wants to build a career is because I think a good point was made when I was listening to this, and I think it's the point I'm kind of sticking on. These legends, especially of 15 years ago, like Lampard and Gerrard, where the money was had really at least started, if not was really into football at that time. These guys don't need to put themselves through this kind of pressure as elite level managers. So what they're doing it for is for the glory, and is for I guess, the competitive aspect, and I guess for some a love of football, but probably more a love of winning for these guys when you're at that stature. So, and obviously we've had some success factors, but I just wonder when Gerrard and Lampard, now that they've been punched in the mouth, Gerrard for the first time, Lampard a couple of times, through this whole managerial career sort of thing, is it just a case of, A, can I even get a job that was at that level again, an Aston Villa and an Everton? Probably not, because to our point, you'll be seen as a failure in Premier League manager terms. And B, do I need to even do that? Like, will it just be more cushy if I just stay on TV? I'm still involved with the game. I'm just a pundit. There's no pressure. Or do they want to take a step back, go to the Championship, and work their way back up? I don't know. If I was in their position, I don't think I would want to. Especially for Lampard, you were given Chelsea, and now you've got to try and work your way back up to that. But like, that's about as high as you can get anyway. So I don't know. For me, if I was in their position, I don't think I would be doing it. They obviously have their reasons, but they don't need to be doing it financially or anything like that. So yeah, I think it's an interesting one. I definitely think in terms of Premier League management, both have to be seen as failures. But let's not forget, in Gerrard's case, he did lay the foundation for Rangers. I think they had an unbeaten season in Scotland, and obviously there was their first title back from after they got relegated and whatnot. I don't know how many years ago that was now, but so he sort of put the foundation for them to become at least like one of the two elite Scottish clubs again, if they weren't already. I mean, it just took them a step back, and then obviously the foundation for a Europa League run, even though he wasn't in charge for it and Van Bronckhorst took over. It was very much the team that he had built, and now we see Van Bronckhorst has also been sacked. Talk about ex-players as well. So, well, that was during the World Cup break or whatever. But yeah, so yeah, I don't know why they do it. I guess is my main point, given that they're so comfortable and they can still be involved in the game in a less pressurized way.
I think for Gerrard, it might be a little bit harder because he did have that success in Scotland with Rangers, especially going invincible as well. And he had, I think that season as well, they had a pretty decent Europa League run. I think they made it to the quarters, if I'm not mistaken. And then for him to leave, I think 2 or 3 games in, and then go to Aston Villa, from the shows that I listen to, you have the callers calling in. A lot of Rangers fans actually don't want him back now. So he's sort of burnt that bridge to an extent for a lot of fans. So if he was to come back to Rangers, he would have to pretty much have instant success and deliver them. In that first season back, he would need to deliver them a title. Otherwise, that ship has sailed in regards to Rangers. With Lampard, where it's difficult for him. with him though at Everton, I've heard that a lot of these like people calling in and whatnot to like Talksport, they don't blame Lampard. They actually feel sorry for him to be put in that position. They're everyone like is on the owners of Everton, and they're saying they're the ones to blame, and whereas Lampard isn't. I don't know. It depends really. Like if you're not, it depends how much control you have on signings. Because for instance, if you contrast that to Liverpool or Man City or even Arsenal now, Pep, Klopp, and Arteta, they have a lot of input into what players they want to bring into the club. Whereas if you have an owner that is high ego, he's like, "Nah, I'm going to sign these players," like, and then you work with them. For a manager like Lampard, I don't think he has the experience to make it work. Ancelotti did to an extent, and then he left once something better came along at Real Madrid. Now, my question is, should Gerrard and Lampard then take on possibly a number 2 role at one of these top clubs? So similar to what Arteta did at Man City, where he became Pep's number 2 for 3 years before moving on. So should they... I'm not sure if Gerrard should go to Liverpool and become Klopp's number 2. Klopp did offer him the under 18s when he first retired, and I think he took them for a year or two. But would you want Gerrard as Klopp's number 2? And would that be a step down if the number 1 spot wasn't guaranteed to Gerrard once Klopp actually leaves as well? And where could Lampard go as a number 2 to learn from a top-class manager? He did have a year at City. Could he go study under Pep for a year or 2 or 3? I wouldn't put him as a number 2 to Potter, because Potter is an elite. So the only 2 managers that you could send these guys to become a number 2 under would be, in the Premier League at least, would be Pep and Klopp. I don't think you'd send them to Spain to train under Ancelotti.
Well, the Lampard one you could. Remember, they had a very fruitful at least one season. They had 2 seasons together, but one season.
Yeah, but you have the language
that was
barrier.
Lampard's top scoring season, I believe.
You have the language barrier, though.
Yeah, you have the language barrier with players, and you would need to work on that. Look,
yeah.
Well, I think you make the point in terms of where could you send them. I mean, Ancelotti could work for Lampard, no doubt.
The other way around. Not Lampard for Ancelotti.
Yeah. Yeah.
Ancelotti can become Lampard's number 2.
Well, I think it would be more the way I said it, because Lampard and Gerrard are the ones who need the favour. So they're looking at the manager that they need. Then that's my point. My instant reaction was these managers, I don't think, want to bring in guys who were so recently number 1s and guys who you've got to say, for the point that I said, like the fact that they don't need to do it. They are in it for probably somewhat egotistical reasons, and you just look at the playing resumes Steven Gerrard and Frank Lampard have had. Like, how can you imagine that these guys in a football scenario don't have a massive ego when it comes to anything related to football for how successful they were as players? I, as a number 1, if I was Ancelotti, if I was Pep, if I was Klopp, I would be very hesitant to bring someone like that in as a number 2. So I think, for me, my instant reaction was it doesn't make sense for these clubs, because Arteta was never a number 1 before he became Pep's number 2. So it's always established. You're learning here, and then you'll move on. But these guys have already been number 1s in Lampard and Gerrard's case, I guess, at big clubs already. So they already have, I would say, pretty set ideas. I think they'd be foolish if they weren't. If Lampard and Gerrard wanted to continue as managers, I think they'd be foolish if they weren't reaching out and learning probably from these managers anyway, but just not in an official capacity. And then obviously I think in that scenario, the managers would be more than happy to help those guys, because like, all right, they'll just be around the training ground for a bit. They'll have a look at what we're doing, how we're doing it. They're just learning really, but they're not here in an official capacity. So that's all good. In an official capacity, yeah, I think you start looking at those stipulations that you put on in Gerrard's case for sure. Like, if he comes in as number two, it's expected that he'll take over from Klopp at some stage, and that kind of puts Liverpool in a bind, and I don't think they really want to do that. So, and plus, I'm actually secretly holding a bit of hope for another former player who might come to Liverpool. When I think I mentioned him on the last pod.
I think I know who you're expecting.
Yeah.
But does he already have another job though?
Yeah, he has a job at the moment.
Yeah, Xabi.
I have big hopes. If he could be the coach, if he could be a coach like he was a coach on the field, he could be something special for sure.
But
he was the ultimate coach on the field.
But is he another one where he should have maybe gone and studied under Pep for a year or two? Because he went straight into management. He wasn't anyone's number two.
Well, he did a fair bit of time at Sociedad B, so I guess he was working within that environment, pretty comfortable environment. Now he's gone off to Leverkusen. He hasn't worked under an elite manager,
but as a player, yes.
As a player, he's worked under, and I think that's what I'm saying. I think as a player, you could tell how cerebral he was, and just how much he was the voice of the coach, especially when I think to that Real Madrid team with Ancelotti. But he's also worked under Pep at Bayern. He was fantastic at Bayern as well. I keep saying this, that was an underrated Bayern team just because they never won the Champions League. But for me, that still remains my favourite Pep team. So, I think he was a big part to the point in that Bayern team. He was a big part of why they could shift formations, shift systems within a game. He was so unbelievably clever. Like I did when we did the last 20 years, players of the last 20 years, I put him as my first team holding midfielder because I love him that much. So I have huge hopes for him as a manager. Leverkusen to do it well. I guess we'll touch on that when we do a little Bundesliga wrap from the midweek. But yeah, and that's the point. As Liverpool, I wouldn't want to put myself in that sort of lock into Gerrard when there's potentially other very good young managers coming through as well.
And just to, I guess, wrap up this segment in regards to former players, this is something that got me thinking. Now, like, I listen to TalkSport, and Darren Bent and Jack Wilshere have a pretty good relationship on there. And Jack Wilshere, I think, is the under-18s coach at Arsenal now. And they had sort of just like that casual sort of conversation where Darren Bent asked him, "Oh, when do you want me to come down and do some finishing training with the strikers?" And that got me thinking, like, what are your thoughts on bringing in former players, especially greats, like for instance, like a Thierry Henry, bring him in for a couple of sessions at Arsenal to do like some finishing training? You have also, like I said, you have Jack Wilshere taking the under-18s. You have Per Mertesacker taking the under-21s, I'm pretty sure, at Arsenal. You mentioned Xabi Alonso was it was the under-21s coach at Real Sociedad before going to Leverkusen, or the second team coach. So you have like these former players, but especially I guess for defenders, I guess for anyone really, defenders, midfielders, or even attackers, or even goalkeepers, just bringing them in, especially the legends of the club, bringing them in for a session or two to give their knowledge and expertise. Do you think it would be disruptive, or do you think it would actually help?
Depends on the scenario. My instant reaction was somewhat disruptive, because if I was the coach or the manager in that position,
because just before you go on, because you do already have goalkeeping coaches, striker coaches,
exactly.
So you do already have them in place. But this is bringing in, like, say, bring in a Thierry Henry at Arsenal. Arteta brings him in for a couple of sessions to help out Eddie Nketiah, Gabriel Jesus, Balogun when he comes back from loan, and so on. Like, would that be disruptive, or would it help?
Well, it could go either way. I don't know. It depends on the scenario, A, of why you need to bring them on, and B, whether they can offer that advice in any way, whether it be on the training pitch, whether it be through like a lecture or something like that. My instant reaction though, as a coach, like in the mindset of a coach, and we know this, especially about elite coaches, they are super controlling. So they want to know exactly what's going down when they bring this guy in. They want to know, all right, like what are you going to do firstly, and then what are you going to say? What message are you going to give out? And it needs to align with my message. So this can never be. I don't think any elite manager will bring in just because they're a legend. They wouldn't just bring him in off the cuff. They need to have that degree of control, and I think that's why generally they probably just prefer dealing with just their goalkeeping coach or their attacking coach, defending coach, because all the information gets relayed to them. They know exactly what's going to be going down in that session. They can monitor the session. Everything's controlled. It's all controlled, and that's what managers want. You do add a degree of unpredictability if you bring someone in off the cuff. The other thing as well, like it's not worrying because I understand, like I said at the start of the show, why these legends wouldn't want to do it. But I would want someone who is a specialist at what they're doing. And the fact that this legend is probably not a coach and they're being brought in just off the cuff. They're not doing this day in, day out. They're not thinking about all the processes that go into taking a session or giving a lecture or whatever it is like that. It's very much maybe a little bit more off the cuff for them. So it can be helpful. I'm not saying it couldn't be helpful, but me as a coach, I would want to control as much as possible about what messages and what teaching was being brought in by whoever you were bringing in. So, and as well, another point, I think maybe footballers get tired of being around footballers for as often as they do. So if I was going to bring someone in who was a bit more of a specialist, I would be looking at different fields. I probably wouldn't be looking at football. I'd be looking at people who were successful in different fields in all walks of life, just to sort of freshen it up, give a different perspective outside the bubble of football, give different messages, and get them out of the I don't know how to say that, but the grind of football.
No, I can't say it now either.
Yeah,
I can say monotonous.
Monotonous. Yeah, get them out of that grind. So that would be something I would look at doing. But yeah, it could be helpful for sure. But I think managers want to control it.
One thing that just came, like while I was like getting all the words out, one thing that immediately came to mind was, do you remember that story with Michael Jordan, how he used to run basketball clinics, and then there was this one like up and coming, like rising star, like full ego, like saying like he can beat everyone, all this stuff, like being a real dick. And then he started challenging Jordan. Jordan's like 45 or something at the time, and Jordan just like, he's like, all right, let's go 1-on-1, and just destroys him. And then like this kid was apparently gonna be like a number 1 draft pick and everything. Like he was like meant to be the next big thing. And Jordan just destroyed him and destroyed his confidence and just wrecked him. And I think he never ended up going to the NBA, or maybe he did, but like he just like was shot. Like I don't think someone like Henry would do that to Nketiah, because
if Nketiah was talking that big game,
but perhaps
he sees Nketiah walk in with his number 14 shirt on.
Take that off.
No, take that off. Can't be having that.
But like, maybe it could also go that way, where like you bring in this like legend, like an Henry, who's the highest goal scorer for Arsenal, and yeah, he's come there and he started giving tips like, yeah, maybe like position your body this way, like blah blah blah, do this, do that. But then the aura of him could actually end up maybe killing the comment, because then Nketiah, maybe the next game, he's like, oh, I just had this training session with Henry, got all these lessons. Now I need to live up and use what he taught me. Maybe that can, I guess, put a bit of added pressure onto him. And I'm using this as an example. Like, I don't know for other clubs. Like, I guess like Gerrard could come in and help out, like the Liverpool midfield, for instance. Like,
he could if he put his boots on at the moment.
But like, I don't know for other clubs, like bringing in certain legends. Like, for instance, Gary Neville keeps on harping on about like Man United don't have a proper right back. Like, why doesn't he come in and just have a bit of a session with the right back, for instance? Yeah, for instance, like just like give like these lectures, or like a training session or two. But like, yeah, it could go the other way where it adds a degree of expectation. Then like, oh, you've been one-on-one coached with a legend like Alan Shearer at Newcastle as well, like for a striker. Like maybe it could go the other way, like you said.
Yeah, you don't want to be expecting Man United Gary Neville, and then you get Valencia Gary Neville rocking into the building with Phil, of course.
You know that's the other thing. Like Gary Neville goes on about how like he wasn't familiar with the culture. Obviously, there was a language barrier and whatnot. So like to my point with Lampard, I don't think necessarily him going to Real Madrid and being a number 2 to Ancelotti would be that benefit. Maybe it wouldn't be as bad because he is a number 2. He's not actually taking charge of the sessions, and like the players aren't looking up to him. They're just there to sort of listen to him, but not necessarily take direction from him. But another one, Lampard could also go to Roma and be a number 2 to Mourinho. Same thing with I guess Ancelotti, where there's a possible language barrier. With the players at least, because it's in Italy. But that's another one he could go under.
Yeah, I think they're both good suggestions if that's what he wants to continue to do. But that's the thing I'm interested to see for both of them. Do they actually go back into management after these setbacks?
Yeah, because I don't think Premier League at this point in time is for them. I think if they're going to be a number 1, probably the Championship.
Yeah, Championship for sure.
And speaking of the Championship, I think Company is on top of the table with Burnley. So it's another Arteta. Technically Arteta and Pep disciple, because Arteta was there when he was coaching it, but it's a Pep disciple. That's top of the table.
I don't know. Hopefully we'll see them come up. Did you see the Shrek themed signing announcement?
No, I saw the headline for it, but I didn't actually see the video or whatever.
That was a bit of fun. Burnley making a few waves. I guess get a mention on the pod. Well done to Burnley.
Yeah, I guess they're in good company.
Hey.
Very
nice.
But since I think that's enough in regards to like former players, who knows? Maybe we might swing around to it later on if the topic calls for it. But Caleb, I'm going to let you lead on with the next topic since I introduced this one.
All right. Well, it's one. I don't know how long we'll spend on this topic, but it's one that I don't know. Victory lap might be a bit strong, but we've flagged it on the pod in the last 2 episodes, and I think we're just about to start hearing a lot more discourse on it. So I want to take a little bit of credit in saying I got there first in terms of trying to generate some discourse around this club. But it's a club a couple of pods ago that we asked where to next for them. Club in wretched form. Club who would expect to be challenging for the title in Serie A. But AC Milan, this dark sort of patch of form, you could say culminated in a 3-0 loss in the Supercoppa to bitter rivals Inter. I wouldn't say that because that trophy's just a trinket. And as Inter somewhat proved with their performance earlier this week as well, they've been accused of over celebrating their win because they come back home and they lose 1-0 to Empoli at home as well, and that sort of just throws further spanners in the works for this top 4 race. Definitely knocks Inter out of any title race at all. I think everyone's knocked out of any title race at all in Serie A. Napoli are just rolling to that title very comfortably. Yeah, but Inter continue just to be such an inconsistent team, such a big game team, which might help them in the one competition they're kind of left in that matters. But they also need to make sure they make top 4. Everyone's been added the little help of Juve losing their 15 points. So now Atalanta and Roma in good positions. Lazio with this 4-0 win over Milan, which is the big story. I think get themselves into 3rd. Milan stay in 2nd, so it's not all doom and gloom, but they're well embroiled. I think they're only 1 point ahead of 5th. So they're well embroiled in a top 4 race. There's definitely, I can't say definitely, but there's no shot at the title for me. Napoli are just rolling away. And Milan have a lot of players who I would think a lot of clubs all over Europe would be eyeing up definitely in the summer. We talked about it, the core, which I think is it's hard because, and this is the sort of saddening thing. Even though I'm not a Milan guy, I'm not a big fan of Milan. I was growing up where Liverpool played Milan in those two Champions League semi-finals. Um, but the saddening thing is like outside. I was going to say outside of the elite clubs in Europe, they have the most exciting core. My question is why? Why is AC Milan not an elite club in Europe? Why can we not put them in that bracket? And I think while Serie A has been exciting for somewhat the parity, it is maybe financially. It's definitely it's definitely financially the weakest league out of the big three. If we remove Germany and France for the purposes of this discussion, only because Spain you still have Barcelona, Real, and Atletico to some degree, who I think are all in better positions than, well, now any club in Serie A after what has happened to Juve in recent seasons. And I guess a lot of people should be saying like, oh, why aren't you leading with that story? I think the Juve story has been heavily saturated. I think we've heard enough about that. And
there's just before you go on, there's possible spillover into Tottenham with that.
Yeah, with Paratici. Yeah. And I think, look, just as a side note, I think that's totally unfair, to be quite honest. I don't know, like, until we know what his, like, I don't know. All right, side note on the Juve before we go back to mine. I feel like, and without deep diving, without knowing absolutely everything, but I feel like Juve have been somewhat hard done by in this whole thing. Because, like, I think the whole point being made is their wiretaps, so that they have evidence of maybe those people in charge at Juve talking about inflating players' values. But the fact is, like, there is no official thing that you just go on and you see a player's value. There's no official list of players' values. So the value is in the eye of the beholder. So, like, I know that Juve, because they are publicly traded, it becomes a criminal thing if they're defrauding people. I get that. That is probably the most egregious part of the whole thing. But on the footballing sense, it's like, well, like why aren't we investigating Shakhtar? Man, like, they've just valued Mudryk at 100 million. It's like, everyone knows he's not worth 100 million. Why aren't we investigating Inter for valuing Romelu Lukaku and selling him back for 100 million? He's not worth 100 million. So these prices have been inflated for so long. I just don't quite understand why they're prosecuting one team when it, for my eye, it appears like everyone's doing this nowadays. If one good thing can maybe come out of it, maybe we could get an official valuation on players, and maybe we can sort of start to regulate what players are worth and start to bring the market back down to ground, maybe somewhat, because it is ridiculous what's being spent at the moment. But I don't know. From the outside looking in, it just looks like Juve have been a little bit hard done by. It kind of takes a bit of shine off this top four maybe race in Serie A as well. Who knows? Maybe they could get themselves back in. But the way, like, I don't see them going on another 8-match winning streak with all those clean sheets again, because I thought that was probably their luck used up there. But we'll see. Maybe they can. They've still got good players. But yeah, back to the Milan point. They have such an exciting core, like I was saying, and a lot of big clubs all over Europe will be looking at them, looking to pick the meat off those bones, really. And yeah, Milan just look like a sort of stranded animal that the vultures are waiting to circle at the moment, because this season doesn't go well. If they maybe only just scrape into top four, if Tottenham knock them out in the next stage of the Champions League. I mean, if I'm Rafael Leao, if I'm Theo Hernandez, Sandro Tonali, Mike Mignon, am I looking to stay at Milan past that? And we've already seen that they're not necessarily going to be willing to pay the wages to keep these players there, like Frank Lampard in the summer, who chose to go to a club that I think everyone could see he was not the type of player for, and he still chose to go there for the wages. So I think Milan, are in a really bad spot, disappointingly, because I think it would have been great to see a potential Napoli Milan rivalry in years to come. And like we said, I think on the last pod where we brought up Milan, now it turns to a question: can Napoli keep their core together? I think they're more hell bent on doing so. But when those big clubs come in for Victor Osimhen in the summer, are they able to? I don't know. Even Kim Min Jae when they come in for him, maybe Alex Merritt in goal. Di Lorenzo I could see staying just because I think he's about 30. So don't know if the big clubs come in for him, given he's a bit older. But let's hope they can keep it together. It hasn't happened yet, so let's hope Milan can keep it together. But I can't see it just because they're not in a good way at the moment. They're not going to challenge for Serie A. This recent run of form has taken them out of that, and they need to find something before we go back into the Champions League to have a hope of beating Tottenham, who aren't great themselves, but I'd still probably just about fancy them over Milan at the moment.
You know, just on your point where you said like that Italy is probably like the third. Well, you said the third poorest league.
The third
of the
richest,
top.
I should say. Third top. Third from top.
But like the reason, my immediate question is, how are they running these clubs so badly? Because I think FIFA put out a report. I'm not sure if it was the last transfer window or if it's the last like 5 or 10 transfer windows, but apparently the English Premier League makes up for a third of all the transfer spendings. So out of all the leagues in Europe, England, the EPL, made up for a third. Like obviously that also accounts for EPL to EPL transfers. So, you know, Chelsea buying from Brighton, for instance, like Cucurella. Like obviously it accounts for that. But for instance, Man United just sent 160 mil or 150 mil to Ajax. Ajax are pretty well run, so fair enough. I'm not sure how much money came into Italy. Like off the top of my head, was there any major transfers where some players went from Italy to England or even to Spain for like major fees?
I don't really think off the top of my head. Koulibaly he was a signing, wasn't he? So there was a bit of money, but it wasn't like a younger signing.
It was like 20 or 30 mil, I think.
Yeah, he didn't command a huge fee given his age.
Yeah, but Napoli seems to be pretty well run by the looks of it. But clubs like, for instance, like Juve, AC Milan, Inter Milan, some of these clubs, they seem very poorly run and mismanagement of funds.
I just want to quickly push back a little bit on this Juve one, although like it's impossible to push back from the situation we find ourselves in right now. But for years, Juve were maybe one of the best run clubs in Europe.
I agree with that. But in recent years, in the last 3 or 4 years.
And you know, an interesting point about Juve was brought up. This somewhat, I think the genesis of this was the Ronaldo transfer.
I knew you were going to go to that.
Where their whole transfer strategy shifted to trying to bring in people on massive wages and bring in Ronaldo to push them over the hump
and bring in ready-made stars.
Yeah, because before that it wasn't young players. They were around 30. You think of Pirlo, who maybe started it all, but they were young. They were not young. They were cheaper. They were on a free. They were discarded.
Wasn't there that transfer window? I think it was Pirlo, where Pirlo came back to Juve. I think he was at Juve once before that. Maybe he wasn't, but he came to Juve. I think he came in on free. I think they got like 2 or 3 other like really good players on a free, similar to PSG.
I think they got a few years later.
Yeah, but like I think PSG, they got Donnarumma on a free, they got Ramos on a free, they got Messi on a free, like all in the same window.
And Donnarumma is another one who points to Milan's not wanting to spend on the wages because he left because Milan weren't willing to give him those wages. Now, arguably for me, they got a better goalkeeper when they replaced him, but Donnarumma's been pretty good for PSG. So yeah, just a side note there. But yeah, just a little pushback because Juve for so many years, I know they're terrible now, but they were the epitome for me.
Yeah, I 100% agree with that. That when they made I think they made 2 Champions League finals, like around that time with Conte and Allegri at the helm. 100% agree. But ever since you mentioned it, ever since Ronaldo came in, their strategy changed, and something shifted, and like now they're spending absurd amounts of money, like for transfers and whatnot, and yeah, they're finding themselves in some trouble. But just to my point, like if there's so much money outgoing into these leagues, like the Bundesliga, the Spanish league, and the Italian league from England, for instance, it would be actually interesting to see how much of that money is actually going out of England or how much of it is actually staying in England. Because, yeah, like Cucurella was signed for, 60 mil, and then Fofana was signed for like 70 mil. So that's 150 mil going to Brighton and Leicester, respectively. So it'd be interesting how much actually went outside of England. But even so, like the case with Ajax that I mentioned, that's 150, 160 mil that went for Antony and Martinez to one club. They're going to do some good business, Ajax, and that's going to help them. But if you're getting all this money by selling your players to England, where the prices are generally inflated if you sell to an English club, as opposed to selling to a German club or a Spanish club, if you don't manage those funds correctly, you're doomed. Another example, Everton. Everton looks doomed.
Yeah, and I think, I don't know, I don't have the insight into why Italy is like that. I think Italy is like that because it's Italy. That's just, they seem like they're 15 years ago. It's fun. It's great fun, but in terms of professionalism, I would never put AC Milan were cutting edge for years around that 07 time, with all the fabled stories about their training grounds and how it had the fountain of youth because they had all those old players who were still killing it for them. But even just on a side, go on.
But even there, I think I mentioned it to you. And I read it on Goal.com years ago. Where they have a famed coaching academy as well, where like Conte's been there, Ancelotti's been there, like every one of these top coaches has gone through this famed coaching academy. I can't remember the name of it off the top of my head, but like even their coaching academy like is fantastic. So they have like they produce some of the best coaches in Europe as well. But these coaches, I'm not blaming the coaches, but like if only they could produce the best accountants as well, they could manage clubs and club finances properly.
Yeah, I think there just needs to be. It's hard because you want to say there needs to be this uptick in professionalism and running a club properly, but then you lose. I don't know, you kind of lose the soul and the essence of Italian football, where there's just this drama. Italians love drama.
If you lose the corruption.
Yeah, well, it's part of the drama. I don't like it, but it's the drama of it all. Yeah, I don't know, man. It's going to be interesting to see. It's going to be interesting to see if Milan can command fees for these players, because the two we mentioned in Donnarumma and Frank left on freeze. So it's going to be interesting to see if they can actually command fees for these players. I mean, I think if you didn't get a fee for all of the players that we mentioned, given that their age, that would be gross mismanagement. And to be fair, Milan are at least a profitable club. They were on the brink, and I think an American consortium came in and sort of ran them a bit more business-like, and that is probably why we've seen them do what they've done in recent years. But there now needs to be, now with that title, now with the fact that they have some of the best players in Europe on their books, for me, there needs to be a push to go to the next level, and we haven't seen that. You can maybe point to misusing the money in summer on De Ketelaere, who, just on a side note, I'm full of side notes, but this is an off-the-cuff pod. These attacking midfielders who are built like that, and I think of De Ketelaere, I think of João Felix. I think of Kai Havertz, Jesse Lingard somewhat. I think I had another name on there. I forgot him. Let's see if I've got him here. Zaniolo, the other one who's been mentioned with Tottenham. These attacking midfielders, these young attacking midfielders, I'm off them. Whenever I see someone like that, I'm off them. They're not a specialist. They'd have no position. They have no role in the team. They're sort of like, oh, you're good enough so that you can float around and you could do this, but they're not really good enough. They don't offer enough. So these types of players, I'm somewhat completely off. I need you to fit somewhere into the system, and if I need to build something around you, you better be damn good. And these guys aren't. They don't, for me, have it. Like when I look at someone who I can build around, like a Rafael Leao or a Kylian Mbappe. Yeah, sure, you're not going to do that defensive work that I might like you to do, but I can tangibly see that you are unbelievably quick and unbelievably strong and have good close control. I know exactly what to do with you. But with a João Felix or a Kai Havertz, it's like, what the hell do I do with you? Like, what do you do that's exceptional? Not much, to be quite honest. So, yeah, these types of players, like, I think going in for a player like that wasn't the wisest thing for Milan, especially when they really needed a right winger, given their poorly drawn horse analogy of their left side being so much better than their right side. But yeah, Italy in general, interesting to see what happens. They've lost another really good defender in Milan Skriniar, who's off to PSG. I think that will be in the summer, not now, but I think everything's been agreed upon. So yeah, Inter, it'll be interesting with them as well, what their plan is, because obviously, I guess they got that nice little stimulus package of all that Lukaku money and then got it back anyway. So they might be all right. But yeah, I think the main question is Napoli. Can they keep it together? Because there's a window now for Napoli to go on and potentially do a Juve of last decade, because Italy has opened right up for them if Milan are indeed a selling club, because Inter, I think, have a lot more ways to go in terms of building a strong core. Especially after losing Skriniar, if that turns out to be the case. So, yeah, I think if Milan open the door for them, Napoli should take advantage. But who knows if they can, because of, like you say, that money discrepancy of the Premier League. Just a little like anecdote. I know it's not the most reliable source, but like even when you're playing FIFA and you go a Premier League club, and within 3 seasons I've gone Wolves. I think their initial budget was like 100 million anyway, which is pretty good. And that's probably standard for Premier League clubs nowadays. Because I don't think FIFA is that much off the mark. But by the 3rd season, I already have a budget of £350 million at Wolves after making Champions League. That's just the money that you have in the Premier League. It's just, you could go out and you could just blow these European teams right out of the water. And I don't think it's good for the game. It's great for the Premier League, but I don't know. Like, we're not... Even when we say they have all this money, are we seeing the Premier League be... It is the best league. I think it is clearly marketed as the best league. It attracts the best players because of that money. But these teams probably should be performing better in not just Champions League, but that mid-level competition, Europa League and stuff. But I guess that might be a bit of English arrogance, thinking that they're better than anything that's less than Champions League they don't want to play in. So I don't know. With all that money, maybe the Premier League should be doing better, but oh well. At least it's got 4 good teams this season, somewhat.
Yeah, but even so, if you look at, I think the last 10 or 15 Champions League and Europa League winners, it's like dominated by Spain, isn't it?
Yeah, well, that
especially Europa League
dominance,
especially Europa League.
Yeah, and Villarreal and Sevilla, obviously, in that competition. So yeah, Spain.
I think Atletico won it three times in a row, didn't they?
Yeah, no, you're right as well. Yeah, Atletico have had a few in there under Simeone as well.
But just to finish up on Milan, I've already said it. I think they're going to trend towards being a selling club for the next 5 years, just because they have a new stadium being built. And I know that the cost will be split with Inter Milan, but so maybe it won't be 5 years, maybe it'll be like 2 years, 3 years. But yeah, they're going to have to, they're most likely going to sell off someone like Rafael Leao, who Arsenal actually put in an inquiry this transfer window. I think for either between 60 to 80 mil he's valued at, but apparently the rumor is that he said that he's not leaving now. He might potentially leave in summer though.
That'll be an interesting one. I would be very scared of you guys. I'm already scared of you guys, but if you had, I don't know, like Leo's an upgrade on Martinelli, but not a huge one. I would still stick with Martinelli.
Yeah, I'd stick with Martinelli.
Yeah, if you had to pay 80 mil for Leao, it's not a big enough upgrade And plus, Martinelli still works for the team. You have to change the way you play with Leao as well.
Yeah, that's
But
why
he's a scary guy.
That's why after seeing Mudryk at Chelsea, I was like, damn, I think we missed out on one.
Yeah,
Like that cameo, at least by that cameo, he looks like he's going to be a fantastic player. And it's like maybe we should have went in a little bit harder because I think Chelsea only pipped us by 5 mil, and like
that's a bit annoying.
And in this market, how much is really 5 mil?
Yeah, that's a good point.
Yeah, and especially to the Cronkies, who I think they're the richest American owners like in American sports. I think they top everyone that like all other team owners. So like 5 mil to them is like pocket change.
Yeah, in this market, like you said as well.
So yeah, hopefully, I don't know. Hopefully we can find someone as like Trossard's been so far. His cameo has been a good signing. But yeah, these prices too overinflated.
Yeah, way too overinflated.
But it's a free market. But moving on to away from Italy, there's not too many exciting games. I think when we were discussing what else is going on around Europe, we'll just do a quick little preview. I don't think there's any other topics that we really need to cover.
No, we'll just do a little Bundesliga wrap at the end, I guess. Maybe a few topics from that.
We can do that now if you want.
All right, and then we'll finish on the last one. I have a topic on the preview I know you want to do, so that'll be good as well. But in terms of the Bundesliga, I mean, Bayern. So Bayern were losers. Big winners this weekend were Union, who are back into second after all of their problems. They've put together a nice little run post-World Cup while other teams are sort of floundering around them. Dortmund, I hate to say it, were winners from the midweek. Man, Dortmund they're so poor. Like, Dortmund are my new Chelsea. Because they were so poor in this game against Mainz. First half was pretty even. Second half, Mainz, borderline battered them off the park. They should have at least scored 1 or 2 in that second half. Good thing was for Dortmund that this game was somewhat at a championship level. I mean, it was really poor in patches. But at the end, Gio Reyna comes on. It kind of annoys me that it's Gio Reyna, given all what's happened with him with the US national team and his dad and his mum sort of almost blackmailing the coach to get him removed because they had an altercation at the World Cup.
Wait, go into that. I haven't heard about it, so let's go into it.
Okay, well, I'll go into it quickly, and then if you want more information at the nitty-gritty, I'm sure it's out there somewhere. But apparently years ago, I think 30 years ago, when the US, Greg Berhalter, the US men's national team coach, was, I think, just newly in a relationship with his now wife. I think they had an altercation and it turned physical, or it was borderline physical, and I think it got reported to the police at the time. And they sort of went their separate ways and then found each other again, and now they're married, obviously. So I guess it's water under the bridge for them. But I think Berhalter's wife is good friends with Claudio Reyna's wife, who is obviously Gio Reyna's dad. And it seems like she held on to the information for all those years. And now that she has that information for all those years, and then during the World Cup, I'm sure you heard about Gio Reyna and Greg Berhalter. I think Gio Reyna was on the precipice of being sent home, but there was a team vote to keep him there, and he got to stay. And then after that, I'm guessing the Reyners they got their knickers in a twist about what happened at the World Cup and Gio Reyna not getting enough game time, and decided to disseminate this information that I guess the wife had been holding on to for all of these years, and to get Berhalter out of the job. So, yeah, a bit of a sour story there, and I guess that adds to the layer of, damn, I wish it wasn't Gio Reyna who scored this goal and gave us the fingers to the ear celebration as though he's not hearing the noise.
The Maguire style celebration.
Yeah, the Maguire, the vindication.
Yeah.
But to be fair, that is two winning goals in 2 weeks for him, and he is a decent player. I think Dortmund will be keen to have him fit and playing more regularly because Dortmund, I don't know, they have some decent attackers, some young attackers. Obviously, Jude Bellingham's the jewel in the crown, but we expect him to move on. The defense is just woeful. My God, they can't defend a lick. And when they scored that stoppage time from the set piece, I was just very disappointed that they were able to get a win because they didn't deserve it at all. Leipzig were big winners, though, in this week. They won 6-1 at Schalke, and Schalke are diabolical. I think they're like 10 points off safety, dead bottom of the table. Absolutely horrible. But Leipzig are looking good. I think I'm sticking to my assertion that they're probably the second most talented team in Germany. They move up into third. I think they're only 3 or 4 points behind Bayern now. And Bayern could only draw 1-1 at Köln, which is where I started this sort of rap. At home against Köln, should I say. Concede from a set piece early. And I guess this is the thing that I noticed in watching all these Bundesliga games. It looks like defending is optional in Germany nowadays. You don't have to rock up ready to defend. We're just gonna play. If you want to defend, you can, but if not, it's all good because we've talked about Bayern's fragility. I guess they're the team leading the way in the league. They have just conceded a stupid goal. Upamecano doesn't get first contact to the set piece, and it just gets flicked onto the back post.
Upamecano.
Our boy. So I don't know who lost their man. I forget who lost their man, but such just a soft goal for a team like Bayern to be conceding in the first minutes against Köln at home, and then they really struggled to create anything. I mean, they got into the box enough, but when they got into the box, they really lacked sharpness. Choupo-Moting is looking more like Choupo-Moting rather than Robert Lewandowski up front now, so he's come back down to earth somewhat. He had a few chances. Musiala took a few too many touches at times as well, and they were just kind of very abject until Joshua Kimmich popped up with a 30-yard screamer to salvage a point in the 90th minute, which would have been a shock loss at home for a team like Bayern. So they stay top. Leipzig are coming, though. I think they're coming for them now. And if Bayern continue this fragility, I think Leipzig will be very hot on their heels in no time. But they'll be disappointed they couldn't take all 3 points last week in the clash against Bayern at home. And the other one that we'll touch on, I think this was probably my most pleasant surprise of the weekend, were Leverkusen, who I think have a claim to be probably the third most talented team in the Bundesliga. Unless you weight Jude Bellingham so much that you would put them above Leverkusen. I wouldn't argue that because Jude Bellingham is fantastic. But when I look at Dortmund, it really is only Jude Bellingham who I'm really excited by. Whereas Leverkusen, I think Moussa Diaby is the jewel. He is a fantastic right winger. And if he was any other nationality other than French, we would have seen him shine at the World Cup, because he couldn't even get into the French squad that had injuries, which is a scary thought. And this guy is, for me, one of the best right wingers in all of Europe. I mean, I would put him just a notch below a Bukayo Saka. I think he's that good. He's that fluid. He's that quick. Has that closer control. If he could just add more end product, he is well on his way to being one of the world beaters in Europe. So he's the jewel in the crown for me. I think the midfield looks functional with Amiri and Andrich in there. Andrich sort of doing his Casemiro impression, clogging up gaps. I've talked about Frimpong as maybe a Tottenham target. He's very raw, but he's exciting on the right-hand side. He can give you something. He just needs to work on that final pass. This is all without Patrick Schick as well, by the way, who's not... I don't know why he's not playing. He might be injured at the moment, but and as well they had Florian Wirtz come back. Jonathan Tah's like a decent, serviceable defender at the back there. Hincapie, I know a lot of people rate him, and what I was really and Hudson Odoi's there as well. So yeah, I think Leverkusen are looking good. And what I was really, just to wrap up on this Bundesliga wrap, I was really pleased to see them go away from a back three. Xabi Alonso went away from a back three for this game. I hope that's the plan going forward, because he now has Florian Wirtz back at his disposal. So, and they went to a 4-2-3-1, and they played with sort of like United play, sort of like City played last season as well. Sort of the diamond up front, high pressing, good. They offer good outballs, could go forward quickly, and very dynamic in that diamond when you've got Moussa Diaby, Florian Wirtz, and Callum Hudson-Odoi all part of that, and maybe if Patrick Schick could come back and help that diamond out as well. They're starting to look like a really exciting team. So if they could keep hold of primarily Diaby, who I think there was talk of him in the summer, and he opted to stay, and Leverkusen obviously got off to a dreadful start at the start of the season, but they're right back in the mix, I would say, at least for Europa League spots, but I think they'll probably be in the mix for the Champions League spots given the performances of the clubs around them, excepting Wolfsburg, who I believe got another win. So I think they're up to 7 wins on the spin, and we know that Niko Kovac can do a good job in the Bundesliga as well, as he did with Eintracht. Maybe not so much Bayern, although obviously you still won the title because you win a title at Bayern. But yeah, I think there's a few teams coming up for those top 4 spots, and I think there might be a title race in Germany because Bayern just aren't impressing me that much. And when we do Champions League sort of preview, when we get closer to that, if things don't change for a lot of these elite European clubs, I mean, we touched on it, but like no one's playing to the standard of Napoli in that competition this season. No one's getting close to it at the moment. So we really need to start seeing a bit of a turnaround from your Bayern Munichs, your Manchester Cities. Maybe Real Madrid are going to turn the corner now they got Benzema. But yeah, these clubs, I mean, I don't even want to put Liverpool in that mix. So yeah, these clubs that you expected to be there or thereabouts for the Champions League this season just seem way off it. So not only could the door be open in Italy for Napoli, it could be open in the Champions League. So yeah, Bayern need to get their shit together. But the Bundesliga, while the quality might not be the best, it is getting entertaining now with those races for top 4 and the title really hotting up now.
It always gets entertaining in the towards middle end of the season. So yeah, we don't.
Well, actually, off the back of that, this month's, and then we'll go into our last. I guess it's just the preview that we wanted to do, but just for the second half of the season, off the top of your head, what are you most excited to see? Except for maybe barring the obvious for you as an Arsenal supporter, but yeah, what's getting you juices flowing to see in the because I think we're in a bit of a lull right now in the season. It's sort of like we know what each team does. We don't we're at this point where it's just grind out results, middle of winter. We're all waiting for the Champions League to come back. So I guess let's start to ramp up that anticipation for the second half of the season. And yeah, I'm just interested to know if you want to talk about Arsenal. We'll talk about Arsenal a bit later, but what else are you looking forward to in this second half of the season?
I'm looking for teams, I guess, finding their form, because you expect these elite teams to stop struggling and start to ramp up because they've won titles in the past. They have the elite players, and they start to play a little bit quicker, a little bit more intense, and the quality as well increases. So you expect that as the weeks go by, as you start coming towards the end of the season, because if these teams don't start doing that, i.e. Bayern and Man City, they're not going to make it far in the Champions League. And a team like Napoli, who's been consistently on the rise, or even just high level but flat, so playing at the same level week in, week out, not ramping up, teams like that are gonna, you would expect them to make the semis, if not the final of the Champions League at least, and to win their respective league as well.
Yeah, that's a really good point. I would probably rephrase it to, I'm interested to see if these clubs get back to their level, and if it has this whole time been a case of energy conservation for this point of the season. That's what I'm interested to see.
Similar to NBA.
Yeah, that's what I was going to say. My conditioning maybe from watching so much NBA is they definitely do it in that league. I've never really noticed it to that extent in Europe, but given that we throw in a World Cup as well, how prevalent has energy conservation and timing, fitness levels and timing runs of form been to these top clubs this season? Is that the case? Or I'm also interested to say, is it just a case of these teams just have way too many question marks, and there's one team that is out there who, in the Champions League at least, actually performs to the level that is required of an elite club? Because I just City were on the path at the start of the season and then fell off. Bayern, for me, I guess Bayern were kind of on the path pre-World Cup. They just started dismantling teams in the Bundesliga, but they haven't come back to it. So, yeah, I think there's definitely, at least we've seen it from those two, if we use them as chief example. Even Real Madrid at the start of the season were pretty fantastic with Vinny flying, and even Benzema out. Valverde filled in the shoes there as well. So at least we've seen it from these teams. But I think in the City and Real cases, maybe the champions glow of the seasons before wore off on them. Maybe the World Cup started to take prevalence for a lot of their players, because I think they were the two clubs who had the most players going to the World Cup. Bayern, I don't put in that bracket. Bayern is one where I see them. They could just not be that good because they have a more inexperienced manager, obviously. And they have players who went to the World Cup, could be in a really bad mindset after the World Cup. They had all the drama with injury, They had a lot of injuries either during the World Cup or just before the World Cup. They're missing their goalkeeper. Jan Sommer, I think, is a fantastic goalkeeper, but it's evident that he's still going to take a bit of time to settle at Bayern because he's never played at this level with this expectation before, and that's very important for a goalkeeper. So, yeah, Bayern is the one I think who have the most question marks. City and Real, at least we've seen it. Bayern, we saw it for a bit, but we need to see it for more. And given that they have a manager who maybe isn't used to getting out of situations like this, that's got to be fascinating to see. But I think I'm with you there. I think we're both hitting on the same point, I guess, is that we can't wait for the Champions League to come back, really.
Pretty much.
And to a lesser extent, the Europa League, because let's not forget, when that comes back, we've got Barca versus Man United, which is maybe more interesting than any Champions League clash. I don't know. It might be.
Yeah, I think it might be.
Honestly, because PSG, Bayern, I would have said, but I guess that's interesting for its own reasons. But in terms of
form,
form for sure. I was going to say high quality football, but Barca, I'm still unconvinced of. But an interesting point on Barca is if they win their last two games of the first half of the season, they're also on 50 points for the season. Barca, I don't put in the Napoli and Arsenal category this season. No way.
Not the eye test, at least.
And also, they've only conceded 3 goals to teams who are not Real Madrid in the league. 17 games, 3 goals against anyone but Real Madrid.
And you would say,
but then you look at,
you'd say that's a makeshift defense as well. Like every week, it's a different back four as well.
Exactly. But maybe that points to the bigger problem in Spain. That I don't know. Spain has some good teams, and like you said, they've been dominating European competition recently. But maybe the bigger picture is when Barca play against the really good teams like Real Madrid, who scored 3, and then like the Champions League group, they're not quite coping. So, but they're still on course for 50 points. I actually can't believe that one.
Maybe Xavi can lead them to become Centurions.
Maybe
he did it.
We have got 3.
He did it as a player, though.
Yeah, those spells of Barca and Real were just crazy.
Yeah, but should we finish off on the most interesting game occurring this weekend?
Real Madrid versus Real Sociedad.
That's actually an interesting game. If you want to talk about it, we can.
That is a really interesting one.
If you want to talk about it, we can, but otherwise it would be one from the FA Cup, and that's happening tomorrow night. Oh,
actually, yeah, before we go into this, just a quick side note, because I forgot to mention in the Bundesliga bit. I just wanted to... It might be a bit early, but I wanted to say, well done on the Guardiola call for how high you put him on the franchise players list. because he looks fantastic at Leipzig. My only problem is he's still a bit. He's 22, so obviously I can forgive him, but he's a lit. Oh yeah, he might be 20. He's 20. I bought him on FIFA, so he might be 22 on that. Yeah, I think he's 20. You're right.
Yeah, because he moved when he was like 7. No, he's 21. I think he moved to Leipzig 21. When he was 17, turning 18.
But he obviously, given the age, this isn't necessarily a criticism. He's just a bit rash at times. He can make a mistake, but he's 21. He's a beast. If the progression now is, can he be a number one? Because I wouldn't quite put him as the bracket of a number one defender. Like, I'd still want someone experienced and with that leadership next to him. But I think in 1 or 2 years, he should be looking to be a number one and command a Virgil van Dijk fee and go and be the leader of a great team in Europe somewhere, because he is fantastic. So kudos to you on that, putting him so highly up there.
As much as I'd love him at Arsenal, like your point where he should be partnered up with an experienced central defender, I still think Liverpool... Yeah, Liverpool... If I'm looking at it from the perspective of what would help the Croatian national team the most as well, send him to Liverpool to play alongside Virg.
Yeah, I'm ready. I'm ready to go there with you now. I'm ready to say, all right, let's just drop 80 million on him. Let's
probably more
a lot of the budget.
But we said that I think his contract runs out in 2027. Or was it 2028? Was it? So probably going to be more.
Yeah, probably.
Especially after the World Cup performance. So he's probably in the same bracket as Bellingham in terms of like 100 mil plus.
Yeah, you'd think so. He should be around that bracket as well.
Yeah, but yeah, like if he for instance, if he were to come to Arsenal, then him and Saliba, I think they're the same age. They have to learn together then, which from one perspective it isn't a bad thing, but it can also be a bad thing because it might not be able to iron out those mistakes. Like for instance, you had Piqué learning with Puyol.
Yeah.
I think Ramos. Who was he learning with? I think he just he just switched from right back to centre back.
Yeah. I would say so.
I don't think he really learnt. I think he probably learnt as he matured, but he just switched from right back to centre back. But yeah, Piqué is a great example. He was very rash and
obviously Ramos was in the Spanish national team with Puyol and Piqué as well.
Yeah, so he did have him as an influence. And I guess Pepe he is older than Ramos, but not by much. I think he's 3 years older.
Sometimes you don't want to learn from Pepe. So.
Yeah, not really. But yeah, look, if Liverpool get him, I would not be upset. But I'd love him to come to Arsenal. But considering we didn't want to drop 100 mil on Mudryk, why would we drop 100 mil on Guardiola? Even though Guardiola has proven that he probably is worth 100 mil.
Yeah, I think Guardiola's, to the point of the last pod, more of a franchise player. He's more of that guy who makes an immediate difference. But the thing is, if I was Arsenal, I would need to see Guardiola clearly take on that leadership so that I could say he's the number one, because I haven't seen it from Saliba yet in terms of being the leader. He's a fantastic defender, but maybe you just want him to focus on his defending and just be a number 2 for his career. So at the moment, I put them sort of in the same place. They're both fantastic defenders, but they need to go. I think Guardiola is the one I'd look to go to the next level and be the number one. But if Saliba stays at Arsenal and they don't bring in another centre back, he's going to have to take on that responsibility as he goes along as well.
You know, during the World Cup, they did a program on him, or with him, where they just did an interview and everything like that. And I was just when they were asking him questions and all this, I was like, damn, this guy has a very similar personality to mine. He doesn't like going out. He's taken an interest in cooking, which I love. I love watching these videos and finding new recipes and all this stuff. Just a lot of things, these sort of small things. I'm personality wise, I reckon I'd get along with him. If we wouldn't go out anywhere, so just cook. Yeah, just stay at home and cook. But obviously he has he has this insanely strong mentality as well, and like he's very goal driven, and yeah, like he's definitely one like for the future. They even put like he has like this like sort of, you know how you have those goal boards or vision boards or whatever, like he has like his daily routine or like structure on. It's like this guy has like everything like aligned, and he has his focus aligned the way it's supposed to be aligned if you want to become like one of the best players in the world. So
did you
did you
see Liverpool on that board?
No, but I think it was one of those questions like, who did you support as a kid or something like that, like, and he mentioned Liverpool. That's where I got this whole like and I think he said that he would love to. I think he actually did either in that interview or another one, like where they wrote an article on him. He did say that he like that would be his ideal move. It's a shame. It is a shame though that Modric isn't younger, because he'd probably go to Real, and Real have the funds to get him as well. And then like Modric could obviously help him like fit in and everything like that as well.
That's a good one actually. Real, I think, could do with a centre back like that. To be quite honest.
Yeah, especially with Alaba getting.
They have good centre backs, but none of them are like actual centre backs for me. Like David Alaba is not.
They don't have any for the future. And like, you know how they're trying to revitalize. Yeah, you know how they're trying to revitalize this squad. Like they got Camavinga, they got Tuchumani, they got Valverde, Vinny. So they have like they have a balance of like players that are like outgoing through retirement or getting on to that age, and then the next, I guess, generation coming through. But they don't have anyone in. I guess
Militao would be your one.
He's still young. He's still in his 20s. And like mid-20s.
So him and Guardiola could be a pretty fantastic partnership, given the left foot, right foot dynamic as well.
Yeah. Oh, that'd be scary.
Final question on that is Guardiola your Theo Hernandez? Is he your boy?
I don't get hard-ons over him like you do. But
it's because he doesn't play football like Theo Hernandez.
But you know what? I can see that he's going to be if he continues on this path, I can see that he's going to be the new national hero, and he's going to take over Modric's role, or like the role model role within the national scene at least. So that's they've already started pushing that narrative here, and rightfully so.
And that's a good point on who he gets to work with in these formative years, especially at the national team level. Working with guys like Luka Modric. Brozovic is a bit of a hothead, but it's still...
Lovren, though.
Oh, Lovren. That one we sweep under the rug.
Yeah.
We don't talk about that one.
I think he's still a decent person to learn from, at least. Because... I've already mentioned it before. Like Croatia Lovren and Liverpool Lovren are like they are two completely different like players.
And Lovren's still, I don't know if he was there for the Premier League season, but he won the Champions League with us. So
yeah,
still part of building us up to where we were. So
I think he might have been there for the Premier League season as well.
Yeah, I think he
might
have. Touch and go. All right, I'll look it up while you bring up.
Yeah, because he left when he left the season that Van Dijk got injured, and you said, "I wish we kept Lovren." Oh
yeah, we never replaced him.
Yeah, you never replaced. So yeah, I think he was there for that.
Yeah, 14 to 20. So he was there for the title and the Champions League.
Yeah, but let's start wrapping up. Let's
do it.
Finish off on the most enticing game. I guess this is the appetizer to what we hopefully should get in 2 weeks' time, because this is my theory, and I have a feeling that neither team is going to show their true not incentive, but their true intention in this game. I think they might be running at maybe 90%. Because they at least for Arsenal, a win in the Premier League is more important than tomorrow's win in the FA Cup, even though it's a knockout.
Both. It's way more important, the Premier League.
Yeah, so I have a feeling that this one might be a little bit more subdued than what we get in the Premier League. You know what it will be like? You know in boxing, how the first 3 rounds, like the boxers they're just feeling each other out. They're jabbing. They're not really trying to go for any big swings or any haymakers. I have a feeling that's what tomorrow's game is going to be like.
So before we go to a bigger picture question that I have, which might be a bit of fun, but how many starters start for each team? Like who gets left out, who's started, and how drop offy do you think the team sheets are from what they normally would be?
I think you might actually get almost full strength teams, to be honest, because
if
you look at the fixtures, there's no midweek fixture. They're going to have a nice 5 to 6 day break before the next game, so there's no reason to necessarily rest players. So I think you actually do get full strength now, full strength starting 11. Now for City, we don't really know what a full strength starting 11 is. Like, do you play Bernardo Silva? Do you play Gundogan? Do you play Foden in there? There's players that can come in or come out, and you don't necessarily feel that the starting 11 has been weakened. If it's been weakened, it's been weakened by maybe 1%. But I feel like it instead of it being weakened, it's actually given a different complexity to it rather than actually being weakened. So if you play Bernardo Silva on the right hand side instead of Mahrez, I don't think it's been weakened. It's just given a different look to how they play.
I think you're hitting on a very good point, because this scenario, this situation that we have right now is maybe the scenario where I can see where squad depth is actually quite important here, because Manchester City's ability to perform some kind of rope-a-dope on Arsenal is far greater than Arsenal's ability to do it on them. Because to your point, if Arsenal make changes, if Thomas Partey is left out of the team, if William Saliba is left out of the team, if Bukayo Saka is left out of the team, that team is substantially weaker. And City wouldn't really take much from that game. Whereas there's a chance for City to still name a team that is really strong, that can win the game, but they could still leave pieces out that they don't want Arsenal to see for the Premier League game. Namely, Kevin De Bruyne and Erling Haaland. I would not be surprised if neither of those players start in this game because, to your point, it's obvious that City are weaker without those players in there. They can still bring in a Julian Alvarez and I don't know, whoever they want. Bernardo Silva could maybe play in De Bruyne's role. They're still excellent players. They're good enough. They're capable of winning that game. And Arsenal never got a look at De Bruyne and Haaland playing up close and in the flesh for that Premier League game. So they don't they'll know what to expect from those two because they've seen it, but they haven't seen it for their eyes right in front of them in the game. There's a chance for City to do a bit more rope-a-dope than Arsenal.
If I can just interject, I know you don't watch the UFC, but have you heard of Khabib Nurmagomedov? I think that's it.
Yeah.
So basically, this guy, he's undefeated in MMA, right? And you knew exactly what he was going to do. You knew that he's just going to wrap his hands and arms and feet around you. He's going to take you down. He's just going to maul you. And you know what's going to happen, but there was nothing that anybody could do to them. Even people that these guys are excellent wrestlers. They should be able to actually sustain put up a fight and everything. It's no, this guy mauls them. It's what the hell? And these guys, in their post-match interviews or whatever, they're just I did not expect him to be that strong, to have this strength. And, that's the point, I guess, with Haaland and De Bruyne. It's you've seen what they can do. But until you actually go up against it and feel it for yourself, you don't know necessarily how to stop it or how to, play around it, I guess. So
And that's a yeah.
yeah, that to your point, like they could very well not play either of them and save them for the game that actually matters, or the two games that I guess the first game that actually matters when they play each other for 3 points.
Yeah, that game is definitely the more important, and I'm glad you used that little example. But I want to offer a counter. So we've put that narrative out there that City have the potential to rope a dope. But on the flip side of the same point, City haven't felt Arsenal yet, and Arsenal, this team is sensational. This team is strangling. This team is intense. They're technical. They can break you down. They
haven't felt Eddie Nketiah.
They haven't felt Eddie.
No disrespect to the boy.
I wasn't going to go that far. I wasn't going to give Eddie Nketiah a name drop in this, but he is part of the system, and he's doing very well as part of that system. So, but they haven't felt this Arsenal team. So, if I went with a narrative that's more that fits what we're seeing better, I would go with that narrative that Arsenal have more chance to blow City away with what they can do, rather than the other way around with Erling Haaland and De Bruyne. But it will be close because those two players are unbelievable together, and they are pretty much the whole reason City are where they are, because the rest of the team needs to sort of up their game. And I guess it's probably to the earlier point as well. It's getting to now or never time to start. I don't know what the goal is. Have you seen anything on Ruben Diaz? But it's starting to get to the point where he needs to start playing.
He played the last game, didn't he?
Yeah, I thought he was at least on the bench or whatever. So
look.
he needs City need him back in the defense, and he needs to be Ruben Diaz again, because I think they're missing that number one presence to the points we were making on the Guardiola point. So. He needs to come back, be captain, be leader, and be present for these. Maybe not this FA Cup game, but for the Premier League ties, definitely. Because I guess we'll probably leave that to the Premier League. But the question has to be: Can City win all 6 of those points? Because it's getting to a point where they kind of need to win all 6 of those points.
I don't think they can get a result. I think the best result they can get is a draw at the Emirates, because that place just feels like a fortress. Like obviously, yeah, they can win.
Yeah, they can win it.
Yeah, but I just feel like they would be more than happy with the draw at the Emirates. They're like more than happy.
Is that the first or the second of the 2 Premier League games?
Let me have a gaze at that. But tomorrow's game is actually being played at the Etihad.
So let's see if Pep's happy with the home fans for this one.
Oh yeah, because he had a goal at them, didn't he? The first game is at the Emirates.
Yeah, so that will be interesting. How when we do the preview, what position City find themselves in, how much they have to gamble on trying to win that game, or whether they will, to your point, be happy with the point. Because I mean, if it's 8 points and they're on the same amount of games, you almost start to feel, you know what, City need to win this game, not just draw it. Yeah.
You know what, like how you mentioned that City could drop some players to sort of save them for the league game. I'm thinking, you know who I really want to see, who I haven't seen since he played in Europa League, and that's Marquinhos playing.
Yeah, Marquinhos. So, I thought you were going to say.
So maybe drop Saka. Give him a rest, because I think he's also been carrying a little bit of niggling, sort of like he's always like, I think before the Tottenham game, like the question was asked, like, oh, will Saka be all right to play, or even the United game, and like Arteta's like, yeah, he should be all right, but he always does get a little bit of heavier treatment from defenders, so giving him a rest and maybe playing Marquinhos, who is similar to both Martinelli and Saka. He's a very direct player. He is right-footed though, so you wouldn't expect him to cut in. I believe he's right-footed, so you don't get that sort of Iron Robin cutting in, shooting with the left foot, like not to that tactic. Not saying Saka's at that level of the unstoppable Iron Robin cut in.
He'd get there though.
But yeah,
he's going.
If he starts, he showed his best impression against United.
Yeah.
But yeah, like you then give a different sort of dynamic where you have a player he's a right footer, so he's more likely to go to the line rather than cut in. I'm not sure who would come in for Martinelli if you want to sort of
Trossard.
Trossard, yeah, he could come in, and then you could also hide Odegaard as well. You could chuck in Vieira in there. The only thing is if you take Partey out and you can put Lokonga in, but then you're really weakening the team. Putting Xhaka in there, City and Pep have faced Xhaka too many times, so there's no point in hiding him. Or like trying to hide how he plays, because it's like we've played him so many times, we know how to play against him. But yeah, these other guys like Saka, Martinelli, you put in these guys as replacements. I don't think you'd be like, obviously the quality would drop a little bit, but I don't think it's a massive drop off like in years gone by where like you take these guys out and it's like there's literally no one to put in there. At least now it's like, okay, these players could offer a different thought for the defenders to think about or for City to think about, and it wouldn't be like a 50% drop off. It would probably be like 5 to 10% drop off.
Yeah, going through it as we just have, like, I think Arsenal do have options to at least drop a few players. I think if they do drop them to that extent, all three of them, I don't give them much chance of winning this tie. But they at least have the option. I think if you dropped a Martinelli for a Trossard, if you dropped a Saka for a Trossard, maybe just one of those two, and then maybe you could probably do Odegaard as well and drop him.
I think I would drop Odegaard and put Vieira in because they play very similar. So
and then the point is now they've wrestled back that advantage the City seemingly had, and they can hide a few of their weapons as well. And I think it's more important to hide your attacking weapons than those players who play in functional roles, because it's not like Thomas Partey is not going to hurt you per se. He's going to keep it solid. He's going to keep it functional in the midfield. He's going to be really good in there, really solid. But he's not a Bukayo Saka where maybe a João Cancelo gets to see him up close and personal and not start to get to know what he's up against in that Premier League match. So, yeah, I think going through it, Arsenal, to your point, aren't terrible without those players in the team. So they'd still have somewhat of a chance to get through the tie.
And they can always come in at the 60-minute mark, 70-minute mark for a cameo, just like once the game has sort of deteriorated from a energy levels perspective.
Yeah, so this really is the curtain raiser for the Premier League ties that we have in the second half of the season. I think our analysis really shows that. We're more interested to see what the tactic is with squad rotation. Obviously, it's an important game in its own right. You want to go through to the next round of the Cup, but it's not even on the same levels of importance as those Premier League games, not even close. So yeah, as a curtain raiser, this is going to be interesting. It's going to be interesting to see how the managers approach it. So yeah, I think the team sheet, when that comes out, that might be the most interesting part of the whole thing, and then we'll watch the game because there'll still be some good players on the pitch. So,
just quickly, who do you think this game is actually more important to? So which team benefits more from a win? And it can also be a draw as well, and then we get a replay. But let's say that one team is going to win it, without a doubt. Which team benefits more from the win?
Arsenal. And I think the only reason I go that way is because it's at the Etihad. If they can, prove that they can beat City, it might be a slightly reduced City, but if they can do it for themselves, because we keep saying they should have won that game at the Emirates last season, but they didn't. So they still have that barrier to cross in terms of this City team. If they can do that, and if they can do it at the Etihad, I think that'll be a really important psychological boost for Arsenal going into those games. City, there could have been an argument, and I think if this game was at the Emirates, I'd probably say it was more important for City. So I think it just comes down to being able to beat an opponent on their turf would be a really big psychological boost for Arsenal if they can do it.
Or
if City can do it in a replay, maybe.
I'd probably agree. I'd probably lean more towards it being more important for Arsenal as a psychological sort of boost, because I mentioned last year, like we didn't get any wins over City or Liverpool. This season, we've already beaten Liverpool once in the league. We haven't played City yet, but if we can start beating those two teams more, like instead of just on a one-off basis, like we beat City in the FA Cup when we won the FA Cup, but if we can start doing it actually like in the league at least once out of the two games, and then obviously if we do come up against each other like in the Carabao Cup or FA Cup, do it then as well, then it will start to build the confidence more and the belief more, especially for such a young team as well. Knowing that you can beat a team that's been pretty much on top of world football, despite not winning a Champions League, they're still one of the best teams of world football, if not the best, for like the last 5 or 6 years.
Yeah, huge psychological sort of feather in the cap if they can do it. No doubt.
And you know what? If we can, like, and to your point, if we can beat them at the Etihad, even though it is the FA Cup, if we can beat them at the Etihad and then back it up with a win at the Emirates, I'd say that the title is it's not a definite, but it's like it's
as close to done as it can be. At this point,
because then if you can beat them at their stadium and then back it up in your own stadium in the league to extend the point differential, that's gonna be a massive boost, like massive. Whereas like if you beat them in the FA Cup and then they end up beating you at the Emirates, it's like how much did they sacrifice the FA Cup so that they could concentrate on the league more, or the Champions League? Like what happened, or did we just get lucky on the day or whatnot? But if we can get both wins, that would be huge.
Yeah, definitely. So I had two other topics. I think we'll keep it to one, and one's a bit shorter than the other, and one is on Antony, and the other one was on Arsenal and what's been the influence on Arsenal in terms of Klopp v Guardiola, if we wanted to root it back to that. So that one might take a bit longer, so I'm going to leave it up to you, but I wanted to hit maybe one of those topics to finish off, and then we can hit the other one on another
Let's finish off with Antony, because we're already an hour and a half in, and then
we could do Arsenal's influence in the next pod when we review this FA Cup tie that we've been talking about.
Perfect.
All right, that works nice. So the Antony hate, which has just been everywhere. I'm actually staggered by the amount of hate that Antony's getting, because I don't know if I'm on this island by myself, but I actually think Antony's a pretty good player. I think he's only 22 years old. Like, why are we crucifying him for, I don't know, wanting to be a little bit Brazilian? Let's not forget who was doing this in the mid-2000s. Cristiano Ronaldo was doing all these crappy tricks and flicks back in the mid-2000s. And, I don't know, he sort of turned into a pretty good player himself. So, look, I will caveat this by saying I don't agree that he's worth 100 million. Okay? But United were willing to pay it. So they were willing to pay it on a good, promising young player. And I don't think he's played very far below the standards of a good, promising young player who's adjusting to the Premier League as well. And to get the amount of hate that he's gotten, I just think is, quite frankly, ridiculous. I think it's just way too far. I know there's some things that he could do better. That comes with being 22 years old. Now, if you want to hang the price tag on him, sure, but he didn't choose to be a £100 million player. Okay, and you could probably, I guess we're hanging it on him a bit like we hung it on Grealish, but Grealish was already used to the Premier League, was already captain of Aston Villa, and was in his mid-20s when he made the move. And I think he's now starting to improve and be slightly more important, whether that's because City are poor and a poorer player gets to be at the top now because he's performing to at least his standards. Maybe that's a case of that. But if City were willing to pay 100 mil, I think they've still got a decent player in Grealish. And that's what I'll stick with this Antony assertion. If United are willing to pay 100 mil, let's just judge the player from now, because United were willing to just put that money up. So it's not Antony's fault that he was 100 mil. And Yeah, I don't think he's been that subpar. I think he's still learning, obviously, and there's still things he can do better. But the level of criticism is far too much for me. Because I think he's made that front four look a bit better as well, to be quite honest.
Just to push back on a couple of points. Firstly, at least with Ronaldo, there was end product to those tricks and flicks. So he wouldn't just...
Early days?
Yeah.
I guess he was younger. I guess he was younger than Antony, but...
He would still beat
Antony
players.
scored a few goals this season.
But the thing is, he would still beat players, and from memory, he'd consistently beat players one-on-one. So he would know how to get past a player. Secondly, yes, I agree that it's not his fault that the fee, his fault that the fee was 100 mil. But United were sort of forced into that because they lost their opening 2 games, and then they were pretty desperate to get a marquee signing in. Ajax realized their desperateness, so credit to Ajax for holding out. So that's on United for paying that price. But yeah, I agree with you that it's his first 6 months, less than 6 months in the Premier League, considering he lost a month for the World Cup. Also, he didn't come in straight away in August. He didn't have a pre-season with United either. So let's judge him next season, not this season. I agree with that. And yeah, he's only 21, 22. He has time. He's adjusting. I don't think anyone really expected him to hit the ground running, although he did score on his home debut, and against Arsenal of all teams. But I think give him time. I agree with that.
Yeah. Especially, I think people are overlooking the age factor way too easily. He's 22 or 20, Adam push 23, I think.
It's probably the same age as Martinelli, I think. Let's have a look.
Yeah, same age as Nunez as well. So, I think he's Martinelli's a bit younger. I think a couple of years younger, maybe. But the question I was going to ask, and I guess you kind of made my point in there because while Antony's not the main reason that United have been so much better than the first 2 games, he wasn't there for the first 2 games, and then he was there, and United are better. So I think to completely discredit him from helping United be better would be overlooking it. So I think he's helped that. I think they're more dynamic in the front areas. I thought his work rate against Arsenal was fantastic. I think his work rate is consistently better than Marcus Rashford on the other side. And he somewhat has to balance it because Rashford doesn't want to work on the other side. So he's willing to do that. I haven't seen really attitude problems. Sometimes he indulges in the skill a little bit too much, obviously, namely the spin. And I feel like he's brought a lot of criticism on since that spin, which was an innocuous little spin against a Cypriot team in the Europa League. Who cares? It's not that big a deal. I know Ten Hag didn't like it and he dropped him. All right, that's his prerogative, but I don't know. Ever since then, it feels like this criticism has been
he was doing it in Ajax, though. That spin, it's like his trademark move.
I don't really care. I get that you open yourself up to be kicked if you do that. Because I was the type of player who liked to kick someone who would do that. But
I know.
If he wanted to do that, then I don't know. Maybe the other team should be better and get tighter so that he can't do it. Do better if you're the opposition. But the question I was going to ask, do you think he's really been that bad this season? I
don't think so. I think everyone expected him to I need to see his stats, his goals and assists for Ajax.
I'll get his numbers up while you're talking.
Get it for Ajax. But in terms of that, I think everyone expected him. They probably saw all these YouTube highlights and all this stuff, him doing all these tricks and flicks and scoring goals, getting assists. Because from memory, when I did watch him for Ajax, I was like, damn, this guy's pretty exciting, and he has an end product as well. Whereas for United, he hasn't really had an end product. I think he scored that. Was it against Tottenham? No, it was against City. He scored that screamer from outside the box where he cut in.
Yeah.
But
So he's He's 11 and 12 in the previous 2 seasons at Ajax in those respective seasons.
Which I think is pretty decent.
And he's
for
on
a winger.
7 this season, but two were at Ajax before he came over.
Yeah, but I think
he's on 5.
I think 11 and 12 goals. In
for how young
a
he
season,
is,
for how young, and from a wing position as well. I think that's pretty decent.
Yeah.
How many?
So he's on
did
5
you see,
at United at the moment.
Did you see assists? Probably
it doesn't have assists.
Probably had 5. I'm guessing he had let's say 5. Let's not go into double digits, but 5 or 6. So he probably contributed to. So all up, he contributed to 15, 16 goals, maybe 20 all up, possibly if you include goals and assists. So yeah, people probably expected too much of him, and for him to hit the ground running, which I don't think that's exactly reasonable. Not everyone hits the ground running like a Luis Diaz at Liverpool.
Yeah, and I think even Luis Diaz had a few extra years on Antony when he came as well. So
yeah.
So I think age is important, because if you're signing a 27-year-old for 100 million, then you're expecting them to come in and deliver straight away. But this guy's more of a project, and to the point, it's not. I don't think it's like the team has to carry him because he doesn't do his defensive work. I think he does do his defensive work, and yeah, he's in a little bit of a little slump at the moment because he's still only on 3 goals for the Premier League, and I think they all came fairly early. So he needs to add a few goals. And I'm not saying he's perfect, but I just wanted to add a little bit of defense, because some of the quotes I'm seeing come out about him, I just think are unreasonable.
But you know what, as well? Yeah. If you look at the way United is playing, and I mentioned it in our last pod when I said that United haven't yet built up those attacking build-up transitions. So they've only, or in possession build-up. They've only really built up the counter-attacking transitions. And all of that goes through Rashford. It doesn't go through Antony. Maybe, out of 10 counter-attacks, 7 or 8 are going to go through Rashford, 1 or 2 are going to go, or 3 are going to go through Antony.
No, that's a great point, because
that's one. And the other thing that
go.
Dude, Brazilians, they know fuck all English. So it's actually surprising if a Brazilian knows English, which that's fine. I'm not judging him for it, but he's also learning another language as well. So he needs to get accustomed not just to the country, but to the culture, to the language. So the only person that he can communicate with is Bruno in Portuguese.
Casemiro is there as well.
Casemiro's there as well, but so 2 players he can communicate with.
Yeah, if he doesn't already speak English, obviously, I'm not sure.
I haven't heard him do an interview. He probably would have, because unless he learned Dutch, because how would he have communicated with Ten Hag?
Yeah, with Ten Hag.
So he either communicated with him in English or in Dutch when he was there.
I think your football point is a really good one, because United still are predominantly a counter-attacking team, and I think there's this misconception that he is a counter-attacking player. You sort of expect him to be this quick winger who can go direct from halfway to the goal. I think that's what people expect, but when you watch him play, he's not lightning quick.
Yeah, he doesn't have rapid sprint pace. He has more.
Not rapid.
He has more darting pace. Yeah.
Yeah, good acceleration and good agility. But for him, he needs to be closer to goal, where I think he's more effective. And if you're playing on the counter and you need him to be an outball and drift wide to be that outball, then what we're seeing a lot is he gets isolated 1v1, and people expect, he can just skin him, and it's but he's not that player. If you watched him at Ajax, he's not that player. He needs people around him, and then he can interplay with people, and then he can create things. So to your point, when United do progress and get those attacking patterns of play where he can be more in a position to do that with more players around him, I think we'll start to see him start to thrive. And then on the flip side, it'll be interesting to see how Rashford keeps progressing when they have to move away from counter-attacking, and when they have to sort of teams give them that respect of sitting off them a bit more. So maybe we could see a dressing of the balance the other way in that point. But that's way in the future. But I thought that was a really good point you made on the football side of the argument at the moment as well.
But you know what? If Rashford starts to lose a little bit of effectiveness, Jadon Sancho can pop in. Because
I've had him. Yeah.
Because look, he is that more similar type of player to Antony, where he needs players around him. He isn't one that's gonna skin a player and then sprint 30 yards with the ball, or even without the ball and latch onto a through ball. He's more give it to my feet. I'm gonna try and I need an overlapping left back or right back so that I can then cut in or I can feed them and then I can make my move and then play the 1-2. He needs that sort of interplay around him. Whereas Rashford, he just needs 30 yards of free space ahead of him, and that's where he's most effective. So if Jadon Sancho can actually get himself back into the team, find some form, then maybe once they start to actually create those patterns of play and become more fluid in possession, as opposed to, oh shit, we have possession, what the hell do we do with it now? How do we break you down? Then maybe that's where a Jadon Sancho starts to actually shine. Maybe.
Yeah, what a long lost one that one is. I've had Jadon Sancho on my notes for ages, and I just wanted to say his name during a pod at just any moment in the pod. It's Jadon Sancho. Wow, I haven't thought of him in a while. Bloody hell! What's that one? Such a weird one. £80 million as well, and.
But you know what?
Is it? It's mental stuff at the moment. He just needs time off, so that's worrying.
But you know what? I think when the World Cup was on, you know how a lot of these teams went to Saudi Arabia and Dubai and all this other stuff. I don't think Sancho actually travelled with the team. I think
I think that's.
He was doing his own personal one-on-one training, and I think even now, I think as far back as last week, I heard someone mention on TalkSport or whatnot that he's still not training with the team. So I'm fascinated by this one, and it's very underreported. But they spent a shitload of money, and I wonder if they're somewhat giving up on him, or if this is just part of the long-term reclamation project, which is kind of annoying if you're United that you can spend this much money on a guy and he needs to be reclaimed this early because. I don't know, for whatever reason, I don't know what's going on in his personal life. Obviously, that could have an effect. But if it's just because of the criticism and the pressure of playing at United, you need to do better as a professional footballer. I'm sorry. I get that there is pressure that comes with playing at that level, but that's what the money is there for. It's compensation for that. So I really hope that if he's not training with the team and he needs that personal time, that's fine. Take your personal time, but I really hope he's not getting paid because you shouldn't be getting paid. Just really quickly, where do you think he would fit in? Of the top teams, for instance, if he was to, let's say it's not a personal mental issue, it's more of just a form issue. Of the top teams, where would he actually fit in? Would he fit in at Liverpool? Would he fit in at? Can he go to City? Because he was part of their youth academy, and then he went to United. Maybe he can't make the direct switch from United to City. Maybe he needs to go somewhere else first and then go to City. Chelsea have way too many players and way too many wingers.
Many of those players.
Players as well. So Chelsea,
yeah.
No. Maybe Brighton as a replacement for Trossard, maybe?
Well, Brighton would be a good one if he is going through sort of issues dealing with the scrutiny, because obviously it takes you down a step, which will be good for him personally. From the footballing fit, I think City would be a good one. I preface this by saying I'm thinking of Jadon Sancho in his Dortmund days, not anything we've really seen at United.
And he played with Haaland.
City would be, exactly. City would be a good one. I actually think Tottenham would be a good one as well. If he could be more of the creator for Son and Kane, I think he could fit into a front three or front four there as well. And obviously, we didn't touch on this, but the bit of business done by Tottenham in getting Al Danjuma from Villarreal, hijacking
from Everton.
From Everton. he must have been flying over Liverpool and just seen all these people outside the stadium ready to riot. He's like, oh, can we go to London actually? I think Tottenham might want me. I'm interested as well in that one.
But you know what? Just really quick on that. Tottenham fucked themselves over with that because he's flying in. You sack Lampard the day of, or the day before he flies in to do his medical. I think he did his medical.
Yeah, and then you can't get him. Yeah.
And then it's like, as a player, you're like, what the fuck is going on here? Like, who am I going to play under then? Like, fuck this.
Yeah.
So, like, yeah, like, Everton shot themselves in the foot. They at least should have signed him first and then sacked Lampard, if they were going to sack Lampard. I'd say that them sacking Lampard led to him doing a 180 on them. Like,
I would
100%.
agree. Yeah. From the outside looking in, that definitely appears to be the way. But I think he's landed in probably a better situation. Maybe not as much game time, but
because it's a loan deal. It's not him being bought and then him getting higher wages. He's getting the same wages.
I'm interested to see on the Tottenham side whether Conte finally abandons the 3-4-3 and maybe plays a 4-2-3-1 with that attacking diamond that I keep talking about. I think Tottenham have the players to play a pretty good version of that. It's just up to Conte whether he wants to try that. Probably not, but maybe it's wishful thinking, but I think they just need to play better football. But yeah, I think Sancho could fit into there. That was the one that came to my mind in terms of keeping him at a somewhat top club. And yeah, I think he'd be a good fit there. Liverpool, I don't think he's dynamic enough. And Liverpool have like 6 other forwards at the moment, so no real point.
I reckon Brighton.
Chelsea, like we said. Yeah, Brighton would be a good one as well, but I don't know. It just depends if he wants to take that step back.
Is it a step back,
probably
though?
Personally as well.
In terms of stature, of the club, yes.
Do you expect Brighton to be sustainably challenging for top 4 in seasons to come?
Maybe not top 4, but top 6.
Yeah, maybe that's the standard that Sancho's at, really. Well, from what we've seen in the Premier League, there's nothing to suggest otherwise, so yeah, maybe. But that's it. We had our jaded Sancho. We did Antony, we did jaded Sancho.
But you know what? If Rashford can find his form again, why can't Sancho?
Yeah.
So
yeah, no, that's the hope. And remember, at the start of the season, he scored against Liverpool, and he wasn't looking too bad around that patch where United was somewhat rejuvenating themselves after a terrible start. So it is a weird one that he fell off after that. That he even had a say in that. And now he's just in the wilderness nowhere.
It's the Ronaldo factor.
You reckon Ronaldo beat him down so bad?
Yeah, he did the Michael Jordan 1-on-1 with him.
He Kwame Browned him.
Yeah. But look, I think that's a perfect way to end the pod on a Kwame Brown reference. Caleb, let's reconvene after the FA Cup, and then we can actually get to your bigger picture question in regards to the influence of Arteta. So yeah, let's hope Arsenal get the win as well. And also, let's hope Liverpool can avenge their loss to Brighton at Brighton, because they have a tough test ahead of them in the FA Cup. So
I'm not holding my breath. I'm just hoping we don't get laughed at again by the Brighton supporters. I don't want that to be picked up in the speakers. I don't want to hear that.
You know what though? I'm hoping that they can find some form so they can make a top 4 challenge, so that my prediction can still come true, where I say that Liverpool make that top 4. But
there's a good one for the second half of the season. We should do our second half predictions.
But I want them to make the top 4, but still lose to Arsenal at Anfield, so Arsenal don't drop any more points.
Yeah, of course.
And hopefully, or because like it's a difficult sort of position. It's similar to the Tottenham position. Lose to Arsenal in the North London derby, and then it's like shit. We're versing City. Do we help Arsenal by beating City, or do we lose on purpose? I doubt they lost on purpose, but for the bans. Now Liverpool in that same position was like, do we lose to Arsenal and not help City, or but then take a risk at our top 4 challenge? So it's like you're in a difficult position. Whereas like if you're already in the top 4, or like very close to, like maybe a point off instead of like, I don't know, like 6 points off or 7 or whatever it is, then it'll be like, okay, I guess we can take a risk of losing or drawing to Arsenal.
We did that against Chelsea in the Benitez last season. I think United and Chelsea were going for the title, and we still had an outside shot at top 4, but it wasn't very likely, and we kind of rolled over against Chelsea at Anfield that day. And we was just like, you can have it. We don't want United having the title. It's fine.
But you guys had a fierce rivalry with Chelsea at that time as well.
We did, so we just chose the lesser of two evils. It was
Yeah.
like the old Gary Neville saying, choosing a man to shag your wife. Which one would you rather? It's just like, I don't want either of these to win.
Yeah. Well, let's see what happens,
And
I guess.
Also, I will say, if Klopp ever had that plan, I think like he might go into the game like that, and then he'd take one look over at Arteta, and he'd be like, "Fuck that guy," and then it'd be like, "We got to win this game."
The Matthias approach.
Yeah.
The Matthias hate. I mean, we need to get him back on. We haven't had him in a while.
No, we do.
Yeah, I wonder when we could organise that. Like probably because I need to do a Saturday pod because the guy's a working class man.
We'll talk to him. We'll get it back on.
Yeah,
He'll reach out in the comments, maybe.
Yeah, Marty, give us a little shout. When do you want to come on, or even any other guests that want to come on? We should try to get Ian Wright. Ian, you know what? Ian Wright seems to appear on like so many podcasts. Like he was on like Arsenal blog or something like that. Like he did like a half-hour podcast with. It's not from. I didn't really look too much into the channel, but like it doesn't look like it's a massive channel, but it's still bigger than us. For now, but like he really loves to sort of do these sort of appearances from what I've gathered. Yeah, and talk football, especially talk Arsenal. So Ian Wright, come on here, man. We'll organise something. Yeah, to everyone listening, thanks for coming, and bye for now.